Greenland's ice sheet had been moving quietly for decades, an enormous frozen expanse holding enough water to raise global seas by 23 feet. At the Jacob-Chevian Glacier, subtle changes had gone unnoticed by the public for years. Beneath the seemingly solid surface, warm Atlantic currents were tunneling under the ice, eating away at its base, creating hidden cavities no satellite could fully reveal. Scientists had flagged these dangers in reports dating back to 2015, warning of accelerating submarine melting, but funding for proper monitoring never arrived. Residents of coastal towns far away had no idea the glacier above them was a ticking time bomb. In the early hours of December 27, 5:42 a.m., the longest fracture line quietly creeping across the northern face finally reached a critical point. The ice wall's collapse was imminent. Nobody knew it yet, but a massive wave, faster and taller than anyone could predict, was about to be unleashed across the North Atlantic. At 5:42 a.m., the Jacob-Chevian Glacier finally gave way. A massive slab of ice, 3 miles wide, half a mile thick, and taller than a 60-story building, crashed into Disco Bay. The sound echoed like thunder, shaking nearby research stations. Seismographs in Greenland, Iceland, and Canada registered the impact, not as an earthquake but as an entirely new type of event. The collision displaced billions of tons of ice and water, generating a 58-foot tsunami moving at highway speed across the North Atlantic. Within minutes, coastal alarm systems in Iceland, Greenland, and Canada began transmitting alerts, but for many settlements it was too late. In the fishing village of Kikkertswak, just 40 miles away, the wave hit before any warning siren could sound. Residents had mere minutes to react. Boats were swept inland, harbor buildings destroyed, and families forced to climb to higher ground. What was supposed to be a predictable Arctic morning had become chaos, and scientists realized the power of glacial tsunamis was far greater than anyone had imagined. Within minutes of the collapse, emergency systems swung into action, though the time was brutally short. Coast Guard helicopters were airborne within 8 minutes, surveying the rapidly changing waterfronts. In Iceland's Stykkishólmur, one road led out of the low-lying harbor district, becoming instantly gridlocked as 1,200 residents tried to evacuate simultaneously. Harbor masters, fishermen, and volunteers worked frantically, moving boats and warning neighbors. In Greenland's Kikkertswak, Malik Olsen noticed the water receding unnaturally, a silent signal of impending disaster, and ran uphill just before the first surge hit, lifting his boat and depositing it in the middle of the main road. Emergency shelters quickly filled with displaced residents, while supply trucks struggled to reach damaged coastal communities. Over 2,100 people were rescued from immediate danger in the first 3 hours, though some remained stranded on rooftops. Amid the chaos, survival depended on quick thinking, local knowledge, and luck. It became painfully clear: the world's warning systems had been designed for earthquakes, not glacial tsunamis, leaving communities dangerously exposed. Scientists quickly turned to data, trying to understand why Jacob-Chevian had failed so suddenly. The glacier had been retreating for decades, its front edge melting faster each year. Warm Atlantic waters, pushed north by shifting ocean currents, had been tunneling beneath the glacier, eating away at its base, a process called submarine melting. Above, the ice appeared solid, but beneath, massive cavities weakened the structure. This hidden erosion created conditions for marine ice cliff instability, where the ice becomes too tall to support itself and collapses in chunks. Each fall exposed a new unstable face, creating a chain reaction. Seismographs captured a sequence of fracture events over nearly 4 minutes, showing that the collapse wasn't a single moment, but a domino effect. Despite satellite monitoring and research warnings, funding for enhanced sensors never arrived. The glacier's response was purely mechanical, obedient only to physics, indifferent to human preparation or policy. The stage for disaster had been set years in advance. The 58-foot tsunami unleashed by Jacob-Chevian surged through the North Atlantic at unprecedented speed. As it traveled south and east, it lost height but spread across vast stretches of ocean, putting Iceland's western coastline, Greenlandic settlements, and Newfoundland in its path. In Kikkertswak, the surge hit within minutes, flooding streets and sweeping boats ashore. In Stykkishólmur, the 27-minute warning window proved insufficient. Evacuation routes became gridlocked, and emergency personnel scrambled to direct traffic while water rose behind them. Along the coasts, harbors were destroyed, fish processing facilities damaged, and vessels lost. The wave's energy reached distant communities with enough force to damage fuel depots and clinics, highlighting that tsunamis reach far beyond the immediate collapse zone. Across multiple countries, over 2,100 people were rescued, but injuries and missing persons reminded everyone that even extraordinary response efforts could barely keep pace with nature's speed. The tsunami had carved a path of destruction, proving how quickly a glacial collapse could transform into a global crisis. Despite sophisticated tsunami warning systems, the Jacob-Shavian event exposed critical flaws. Buoys and seismographs were designed for earthquake-generated waves, not point-source glacial tsunamis. The system initially underreported wave height by 34%, reducing evacuation time for coastal communities. In Kikirtswak, residents had only minutes to react. In Stykisalmor, traffic bottlenecks slowed the escape of 1,200 people. Emergency planners had assumed a minimum of 20 minutes for safe evacuation, yet the actual warning window ranged from just 6 to 14 minutes. Political and funding limitations had prevented expansion of sensors along Greenland's western coastline, leaving communities dangerously exposed. Scientists quietly acknowledged that, while sirens worked, they did not provide enough lead time to guarantee safety. The event highlighted a chilling reality. Nature doesn't adhere to human schedules, and technology, however advanced, can fail when facing a hazard it wasn't built to detect. The collapse of Jacob-Shavian was more than a local disaster. It was a stark warning for the world. Greenland's ice sheet holds enough frozen water to raise global sea levels by 23 feet if fully melted. The glacier's accelerated retreat, driven by warming oceans, threatens coastal cities like New York, Miami, London, and Mumbai. Scientists warn that Jacob-Shavian may have already crossed its tipping point, meaning the glacier will continue collapsing even if global temperatures stabilize. The loss of ice buttressing upstream glaciers will further accelerate ice flow into the ocean, compounding sea level rise. These events are not isolated. Ocean currents, jet streams, and carbon concentrations link the Arctic's instability to extreme weather across continents. The Greenland collapse demonstrates that small local changes can trigger cascading effects with global consequences, challenging urban planning, emergency preparedness, and the assumptions underpinning climate policy. Humanity's ability to respond is racing against physics itself. The Jacob-Shavian collapse left a clear message: the world must adapt faster than nature moves. Emergency systems worked but weren't enough to fully protect communities in the first minutes of the tsunami. Scientists and policymakers now emphasize improving glacial monitoring, expanding sensor networks, and updating evacuation models. The event exposed gaps in funding, international coordination, and risk assessment for glacial tsunamis. Greenland's ice sheet continues to move, responding to warming oceans and unstable currents, meaning the next collapse could be imminent. Coastal cities must reassess infrastructure and emergency preparedness, considering worst-case scenarios once deemed impossible. For residents like Malik Olson and communities along the Arctic coastline, life has changed. They now watch the sea differently, aware of nature's speed and unpredictability. The collapse serves as a warning: climate change isn't distant or abstract. The next disaster is already building, and humanity's readiness will determine whether it survives or suffers.